I just want to thank everyone having a good afternoon. Thank you for joining this session and track, which is the entrepreneurship session and track. We have two panelists today, and I will have them introduce themselves briefly. But before I do that, I'm just going to go over some quick housekeeping. So questions should be submitted via the chat function. We're going to save the questions for the last 5 to 15 minutes after we've gone through our panelist questions. Captions are available through the CC button at the bottom of your screen. If you have any tech questions or concerns, please let us know via the chat and we will work with you to solve them. And without further ado, we have our panelists here today. We have Dean Balsamini. Dean is currently the director of the Small Business Development Center at the College of Staten Island. And I will ask him to introduce himself shortly. And we also have Derek Irby, who is an adjunct lecturer who teaches here at CUNY SBS and also at Baruch College. And I'd like to welcome my esteemed panelists. And if you don't mind introducing yourself and giving a background about yourself, Dean, it'd be wonderful.
Sure, thank you, Christian. And actually, it's an honor. I former graduate from Baruch, and a pleasure to be here. Know many people that have been in the school and what have you. But let me give you a quick background on myself. I basically a native of Brooklyn, and had the opportunity to get my associate's degree from Brooklyn College, and then moved over to Baruch and got my bachelor's degree, and then on to Pace. So I feel pretty gratified about that because I came from a family of immigrants, first one to go to college in my family, had 5 peers. And so I was pretty happy with that, and that was years ago. But a reason I mentioned that, it kind of gave me an opportunity to think about, now where I'm at in terms of what entrepreneurship is all about. So it continued. I was transferred from Brooklyn over to Cupertino, spent time on the West Coast, which was great, an opportunity, get innovated, find out what's really going on in the world. And basically moved then from there got transferred to a regional operation, which I ran in Newark, New Jersey, over to an operation in Union, New Jersey, and then worked in the Koch administration, actually, and I was the manager of public relations for AT&T. And the end of the story really is the best experience I had in my life. And I did not work for one company. AT&T was a blue chip, so I had a variety of different areas, which I think, lo and behold, would prepare me to get involved in entrepreneurship, because I got involved with our global activities, dealing with the PTTs, which basically are the government-owned industries, and I had responsibility for Asia Pacific, and it was quite an experience. After that, retired. And then actually, as I mentioned briefly to Kristen, basically, my wife said, I think you should do something, and AKA, I think the house belongs to her. So I moved to actually taught at St. John's. I ran an operations service corps, retired executives for 4 years, became chairman there, and then taught at CSI. And in 2005, they asked me to take the job of director. And that's really where I've been since 2005. It's probably one of the best jobs I've had in my life. Engaging the community has been really a privilege. So I want to thank you all. I know you've had a great conference and meeting, and I hope we can add some more value to it as we go along right now.
Thank you for that. I would just like to add something. If you could let our audience know what exactly an SBDC is. Some individuals may not be familiar with the terminology and what
Thank you for that. We sometimes, when we get involved in the small business community, it's like alphabet soup. There's the SBA, Small Business Administration, Small Business Development Center. We're a service provider, and there's 1,000 of us around the country, the ASBDC. But in New York State, we have 22 of us, the help organizations in Albany. I have responsibility for all of Staten Island, which means we provide services to the small business community. And I also have the remainder of the 11th Congressional District, which is Southwest Brooklyn. So the SBDC is really a service provider, which works and is affiliated and funded through the SBA and also through New York State. So we actually, and we'll get into it, I guess, in a little while, this has been an unbelievable period of time for us. We've been extremely busy, obviously, since COVID took over, and I can explain that in a little bit more detail if you like, but hopefully, you know, that kind of covers it. But what do? We assist in small business planning. We assist in providing business plans. We assist in training and also a variety of other areas. But we have 6 of them in New York City. We're at the various schools. We're at Lehman. We're also over in York. We're at private schools too, Columbia, Pace, and of course, Baruch and so forth. So hopefully that gives you a thumbnail about it, but I'll be more than glad to take any other questions on that too.
Thank you for that. And I'd just like to let the audience know that SBDCs are at no cost. And it's something you can go online on the SBA website. You can register and actually set up an appointment. So anyone here who is a budding entrepreneur looking to start their own business or just curious or has their own business is looking for assistance, they have a very wide array of professionals ranging from multitude of different disciplines and areas. And you can get assistance from getting government contracts as a minority businesswoman to being able to develop a marketing and business plan to looking at developing channels for international business. It's a resource that just in my professional space, a lot of students are looking to. I'll tell you a little bit about who I am in a bit. In my professional space, a lot of students are looking for business advice, and they might not realize that the SBDCs are associated with the community colleges in the city, and even throughout the U.S. through SBA. And there, as a resource I've used personally for myself, for my business, for my wife. She's a veteran, so today she's sleeping. That's how you celebrate Veterans Day.
That's great.
So
That's a good one.
they have specialists for veterans, disabled veterans. It's just an amazing resource. And I don't know if the people watching this know what type of work you do and how important it is. And I remember one person. She's up in near Watertown, and upstate, and they have this. I'm sure you know about. They have this resource where they can it's like this sphere, and they can figure out the marketing demographics and all this information that you would have to pay for or have a professional do. It's accessible. So I just want to let the audience know that SBDC is a huge asset. If there's one thing you take from here, if you forget everything, it's SBDC, SBA.gov, set up an appointment. Very informative.
And you know, if I could interject, you can also reach us at sbdc@csi.cuny.edu. We monitor that and we actually do the follow-up phone calls. We've got a pretty effective system, but I just wanted to put that in there in case people want to get us directly instead of going through the state website. But thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to also introduce our other panelist, Derek Irby, and the spotlight is yours, Derek.
Well, thank you. And listen, thank you for inviting me to this conference, this first time conference. I think it's so important to do this at this time with everything going on with the economy and the pandemic. And I think right now SPS is in the middle of this, and it's going to be a catalyst to bring the business world to a next level. And it's kind of coming at a perfect time with everything that's going on around us. But a little bit about me. I'm from New York City, born and raised. I went to high school here. I left to go to Charlottesville, Virginia, where I went to college. I went to University of Virginia for my undergrad degree. I came back and I started working for a couple of years, and then I attended CUNY, Baruch Zicklin School of Business, and got my MBA in Entrepreneurship, which I did part-time while I was working. So that was a good way to get my MBA while not, losing much income. It was a wonderful experience for me. I was lucky enough I ended up at the new building downtown, which was nice because the old building had a lot of difficulties in getting to class on time for work there because there was one elevator where 1,000 kids had to go up in 2 or 3 elevators, so it was really difficult. In terms of my teaching, I have been with CUNY teaching since 2005. I've taught at Baruch College for many years. I taught in the management and the business departments. I taught several courses over the course of the time. And then also I started working for SPS in 2008. In fact, I was one of the creators of the SPS Small Business and Entrepreneurship course, which is Business 340 now, which is still going around. I was one of the first people to teach the course, and also I worked with creating the course at SPS. So I have a big relationship with CUNY because my father was with CUNY. He retired about 10 years ago now, but he was with CUNY for about a good 50 years. He's been everything from a dean to head departments, dean of academic affairs at the central office. So he's had a number of positions at CUNY. And my brother is actually a professor right now in finance at CUNY. So I have a long history at CUNY. It goes deep in my family. My mother also worked at CUNY too, by the way, too. I forgot. My father hired her, so you know how that kind of happened. So, so I was kind of a black sheep until I started coming back to CUNY and started teaching a little bit, because I have spent a lot of my life and still working for the past 30 years. I have been working in real estate development and economic development corporations. Real estate development and economic development are pretty much the same thing. The only difference is real estate development is really development for profit per se. Another side of it is economic development is development for a reason. So we can go into that later as we talk about it, but both of them are equally as important. Both of them serve a very important role. Currently, I'm working with business improvement districts now. I run 2 business improvement districts.
Great.
City. And I'm sure many of you know what business improvement districts are, because if you don't know actually what they are, I bet you have one in your neighborhood if you live in the 5 boroughs, because there are about 70 of them throughout the city. So what are business improvement districts? Okay, business improvement districts is not a public entity. It's a private entity, but we have a contract with the city to provide supplemental services. So what it is that you take an area and the property owners get together and say, you know what, we can make our real estate values and make the businesses run more smoothly by combining our efforts. So they go through a process where they get together and get 51% of the property owners in that particular area to agree to give themselves a higher assessment. So it's attached to their property taxes. So the property owners agree to pay this higher assessment tax, which comes through their property owners tax and property tax, and they go into a separate budget. The budget is for that defined district area to provide supplemental services with the area, like sanitation, security, marketing, promotion, access to business loans. We work a lot with the SBA out with my district at York College. There's an SBA York College we work very closely with. And it's used as a catalyst to be kind of a mixture of public sector and private sector. I don't ever have to worry about the mayor's budget or the governor's budget, because as long as there are taxes, and there will always be taxes, we will always be funded. But we do have to have certain checks and balances with the city, because the city just wants to see that we're using the money properly and we're doing all the things we're supposed to provide for the organization. They're run by a board of directors, which is primarily the property owners, even though we have some city and state representatives on the board. So I say that to say that they're primarily business entities, which are there for a purpose of basically increasing their real estate values, at the same time trying to create a good environment for business to prosper. And they're mostly in retail areas, but there is one I'm working on, which I was a founding member of, which is an industrial business improvement district, which is a different animal. And we'll talk about that as we go through some of these questions and our discussions here about the difference in mentality and difference in focuses here. In fact, there's another industrial, the only other industrial one is in Staten Island, which you may be aware of, I'm not sure. So that's who I am, and I'm looking forward to participating in this conference. If anybody has any questions at any point in time throughout the conference, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you for that. So let's imagine a student is looking to start a business or get involved in the business in their community. How would they reach out to an association of that sort?
Well, we are an association where we can help them find space. We can help them get loans, and in some of our areas, and like in my industrial area, it's an industrial zone, so we can give them tax benefits which are already built in to the organization. For instance, when I got my industrial area set up into an industrial zone, when you come in there, you already get tax incentives for machinery, you get tax incentives for relocation costs, you get tax incentive for hiring people in the neighborhood. So that I have a lot of access to a lot of city agencies, and I kind of am a central office for them. So I can put them in touch with property owners who help them find a space, with local development corporations who help them access these tax incentives, and also a clientele and a workforce.
So how would someone access that? Would they go online? What would they search? Who would they call? What would be the way what should they do to find the person to talk to in their area for that?
Well, it depends. Like, remember, there's lots of different business improvement districts. The business improvement districts are only in a defined area. And you have to be in that specific district in order to qualify for these extra amenities. If you're one block off from the district, when I think you should call Dean. But if you're in the district, you'll call one of the many executive directors of the business improvement districts, and then we can help you go through that process. We're listed on the business improvement district website, which is from the Small Business Services, Agency of Small Business Services. And you'll find all the areas that we have business improvement districts in. You'll also find who runs the business improvement districts and the district boundaries.
Perfect. So if someone were to Google BID and then maybe the name of their neighborhood, they would be able to get a resource to then connect and see if that would be of a benefit to them.
Absolutely. In fact, on the website, they even have it broken down by borough. Perfect.
And I know it's a pretty deep hole there, because you could be in a certain neighborhood and suddenly you also have access to certain types of government contracts that require certain business owners to be in specific zones. So it's a plethora of information and wealth, and it's something that our participants should know about. Because it's very important, and in fact, it's different by area. It's, every bid has their own agenda. I remember when I was living in Brooklyn, they had like a parade going on, and all the different vendors, and it was bid sponsored, and the funding they received was to throw that event, and it was to attract business to the street vendors and everything, and it was kind of cool. And they were doing that during the summer, almost like once a month. They were holding an event, and some of it was social related too. Some of it was, they had like a big movie thing, and musician and artists and some businesses as well, just to attract foot traffic. So it's pretty interesting. So, some students or individuals or alumni may think about getting a vendor, having paying for a spot or something of that sort, and you wouldn't know about it if you didn't look into it and see what's available. So thank you everyone for not just participating, but also thank you to the panelists for introducing yourselves and also sort of getting the conversation going. But I have a series of questions here, and the first set of questions, typically I would say that the questions would be specific to the panelists, but they're open for each individual to answer. I'm not going to necessarily say you first, you second. Whoever speaks first can speak.
That's fine.
I'll read the question.
Sure.
And I'll go through them, and hopefully we can get through most of them before our time is up. So the first question is, given your professional expertise for both parties here, do you see the need for entrepreneurial thinking and its skill sets being more desirable within the workplace versus, let's say, 20 or 30 years ago, and why?
Well, if you want, I could take that, start out anyway. We can maybe alternate, but the real question evolved when you said something before, Christian, which really resonated with me. It's the services that we provide are free. No cost is what I like to say, because free gives a different connotation. The reason I mentioned that, to start out with that point, is the very nature of the mix of the people I have. A small staff of 7 people, 2 former bankers, 2 people that have had extensive experience across country in the Sbdc, and others very, very attuned to marketing and also to social media. A great mix of people that are really dealing with the challenges we have today. So when I think about it, I said, absolutely yes. I mean, we're in this kind of an environment in terms of entrepreneurial thinking. What has just taken place has put a real overlay over the economy and also over the schools and what have you, and how we approach. So yeah, I would strongly say definitely. What are the skill sets? Well, they've evolved. I'll give you a for instance. We were at the college. We were working very well over the last several years, and I got to take you back. I got to do a rollback. I got to go back to Superstorm Sandy. When we got hit with Superstorm Sandy, we were engaged very much in the community. Staten Island was hit badly. We had several people that died, but we also got involved with tremendous experience and working with the local community because they weren't akin to dealing in town halls. And we set up specific one-on-one reviews with the individuals, and they knew we were dealing with hometown folks, so to speak. Now, fast forward on that, that was a lesson learned by us. So now what we did after that was actually talk about clients who came in to open a business plan and said, by the way, you all still need to have a disaster plan. So now fast forward to COVID-19, when we decided on what we needed to do in March, we left the college earlier, a week earlier, and we went virtual. So we've been operating since then, team of 7. We have a Zoom call every day at 4:00. And what that does is it just gets everybody interacted about the businesses and their relationships. It's an information exchange that you can't beat. And my people love it. I mean, I guess they do. I don't know. Anybody hasn't said they don't like it, but it gives us the energy and an indicator on what's happening. So when you start looking at this thinking, the adaptation of new skill sets, being able to work remotely, being able to actually do this, and we also communicate throughout the state with the 22 other centers. We have a program called Listserv. So if there's a question that, let's say you come in with an area that we really maybe haven't dealt with familiarly, we could fan that out around the state. Generally, that's a great asset. And we also meet as a state body every Thursday for another Zoom call on what's going around the state. So I'm going to, go through that one more time with respect to the why. Why do I think so? I just think it's our experience. It's the ability, the people that I do have, former banking executives and former people that have been honed in on what's going on in the community, very essential. And it really promotes confidence in the people we deal with who are relatively new entrepreneurs or even businesses that are established. So I think that's part of our experience over the short term right now.
Thank you, Dean. And would you be able to let the audience know your email so they can put in the chat?
Sure. It's Dean. It's a long Italian name. Balsamini, B like boy, A, L for Larry, S for Sam, A, M for Mary, I, and for Nancy, I. So dean.balsamini at csi.cuny.edu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Derek, if you want me to reread the question, I will. Or if you already have your thoughts composed, go for it.
No, I just agree with Dean, and I think it's going to be mandatory. I agree with what Dean said, but I just want to add that I think it's going to be mandatory, given the current and future environment that we're living in now. I mean, even non-entrepreneurial professionals have to rely on their entrepreneurial thinking just to stay in business, just to be able to be adaptive and to change how you're approaching business, whether it's a corporation in terms of how they're going to approach the remote working environment. How can they keep people being engaged with also helping their mental health, which is something that is a big part of this. How they get people focused on coming to meetings, what's the etiquette, These are all issues that are going to be very important for entrepreneurs to take on and to really explore. And also, employees have to, they're going to have to create new and different ways to simply stay in business. And Derek has been trying to make a profit these days, because it's just going to be so difficult right now with the economy the way it is. I mean, let's just take restaurateurs, which are entrepreneurs, many of them, because they're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs. Just think what they have to do to try to stay relevant, stay in their mindset, keep keep the income going. Many of them did PPE loans, but there's so much that only lasted for a short period of time. They've had to just be entrepreneurial just to think how they can stay in business. Just to give you a quick story about a business. There was a restaurant near where I am, and it's an Italian restaurant. It's very, very popular. And they started figuring out how to get, obviously they started doing the pick up and take up, everything like that. But they got able to have a liquor license outside their business. And they started serving these sake margaritas, which are very known for them, but they start serving them on the street, and they became like a COVID wonder. In fact, they said people used to come just to get the sake margaritas to go, and they would order food. That's how they were able to keep themselves going, with me and the restaurants right across the street from them, who did not think that kind of entrepreneurial way and try to think about how can we keep attracting businesses to the area? How can we keep people coming, keep us relevant, keep us in their mindset? So when they did start opening up, people start coming, and even turn on people who didn't know, they couldn't increase their capacity, but they increased their people who start patronizing their restaurant, because these sake margaritas became this kind of COVID phenomenon per se around the area. So I just think that right now in this world, entrepreneurship is just gonna keep on going up, because there's almost no other alternative for it.
Thank you for that. And just for our audience, entrepreneurship, as far as academically, has been an increase in demand from students to provide more entrepreneurship classes and entrepreneurship majors. So it's not even just about the workplace, but it's also about how the demand is there as well. And I'm going to go into question.
I'm sorry, Christian, can I just comment on what you just said?
Sure,
you're so right.
Sure, go ahead.
Because when I got my MBA in entrepreneurship at Baruch, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was basically like maybe 20% of the MBA programs had entrepreneurship majors. By the time I graduated 3 years later, because I went part-time, it was double that. And now I think MBA programs,
right.
I think that very rarely you don't have a entrepreneurship major in a business school program. So that just shows you what you're saying is so on the money.
And for anyone watching, because I did fail to introduce myself. My name is Christian Washington. I'm a entrepreneurship professor here, so that gives you some idea of why I'm talking about entrepreneurship. But I think this leads us into the next question, actually. And do you think entrepreneurship prevents or hampers an individual's ability to be a better employee if the training is there to start their own endeavor? So meaning entrepreneurial skills are an important part of business. It's a multidisciplinary aspect of business. It's marketing, it's sales, it's business analytics, it's all these different areas. It's accounting, it's finance, but it's also teaching you how to grind out, how to bootstrap, how to hustle, so to speak. And these are the same skills that a lot of businesses are asking their employees to do: grow my sector, grow my department, be a leader, be a manager. So when you're teaching students entrepreneurship, you're teaching them to start their own business, but at the same time, those skills are being asked of by their employers. But in the capacity from us to say, start your own business, versus the capacity of them to saying, grow our business. So given that framework and perspective, do you think that the current way we're going about academically, or just from your experience, is it more of a hamper in terms of the thinking process for students or people who are learning about entrepreneurship? Or do you think it's better for the employee to have that thought process and that thinking model?
Well, I'll take a stab at this one first. I think, well, it depends on the individual to some extent, but with that overall, I think it will make them a better employee, just for the reasons you mentioned, Christian, in your opening. You said, it's multidisciplinary. You have to learn about marketing, research, all these kind of things. And we're teaching these students to become, ground up entrepreneurs, create something from nothing. But most likely, it's also good to get some experience before you do that. So we are sending many of our students into the workforce to do that. But I think they're going to have a better understanding of what it takes in the workforce to be successful. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes if you're a marketing major or a finance major, that's what you're singly focused on. So when you're in a firm that has, let's say, making beauty products, you're focusing on, the bottom line in terms of how much it's going to cost, what's your sell price, and what's your return. But as an entrepreneur, you're thinking not just about the finance part of it, you think about the marketing part, the research part, you think about the sales part. So all those complex ideas come together. They have to work with each other. And many times in certain corporate settings, it's a struggle. But I believe people who have entrepreneurship majors, they go into the situation thinking differently. They'll go into the situation thinking, okay, I'm maybe working in finance, but what is it that marketing needs for me to help make this product successful? What is the research and development needs for me? In cosmetic marketing, the box is a big deal to discuss what level you're going to price something at. We need to get marketing involved in the box maker. They're going to have to take it and then develop it, and research development has to also be a part of the mix. So I think that people with entrepreneurial academic background are able to bring all those different entities together, and that understand how they're able to work together because they have their education is from ground up as opposed to singly focused. And that's what I think is so important. And that's what's helped me personally in my business because of my entrepreneurship degree.
Perfect. Dean?
Great. Yeah, I think Derek is hitting the mark. I like to look at it in a variety of ways. I used to do a lot more counseling, but now with the responsibility I have, I have my counselors do most. But one of the things that I would find out very, very rapidly when I was doing that, and I still do that in certain cases, is I sit down the individual, and let's say it's a younger person who's coming in, really trying to get their wings. And I would say, what is an entrepreneur? What does it mean to you? What are some of the characteristics? Creativity, passion, motivation, vision. So someone has to have that burning in your belly, so to speak, that there's a reason why I want to take this where I'm at and move forward. Now, if you have that, you maybe generated that, or you engendered it, or polished it, maybe while you were working for a company, and you're also providing that. And I think it really gives you a leg up on looking at the business. But if and when we do get someone that's like that, that's great. It gives you an opportunity to kind of, maybe modify and give them and steer their direction and where they're going. Because in many cases, if someone comes in looking for funding, the first thing we tell them is, you have a business plan. And it's, I said, not an academic exercise. But we like to use a lean business plan model. We want them to basically crystallize the 4 components. It's really all about marketing and money. I mean, when you think about it, it could be logistics related to, but all of that falls into play. How do you think about the business? I'll give you one quick for instance. Staten Island, like Brooklyn, is known for its pizza. Okay? We have the biggest contingent of Italian Americans in the country in this 11th congressional district. True story. That's really true. So every once in a while, someone will come in and they'd say they'd like to open up a pizza place on Staten Island. And one day, one of my counselors was out, so I took the thing and I spoke to the guy and I said, "You want to open up a pizza place on Staten Island? Do you know how many pizza places are on Staten Island? Why would someone come to your shop, okay, to buy pizza when you have all these established businesses? Unless the dynamic is there's something very, very different and something that you would be able to, position, I don't know, pineapple pizza, and whatever you think about something that's a little bit new." So I think the innovation activity, look, today I'm very proud of something. We have a public relations release. We have had the highest ever of economic impact since 1993 when we first started. We have had $90 million worth of economic impact on Staten Island, and we're just eminently proud of that. And the reason I mention that is because the stats tell the story, the number of businesses that we were able to help. And what happens is you get engaged with the business. You start cheering when a business succeeds or gets a business loan, is able to stay current in this environment. So not to get off the piece, but I believe it's establishing the entrepreneurship quality. And yeah, if I had a business, and I know I've already promoted a few people that work for me, and they went into a different marketing type businesses, smaller companies. The reason is, why should I go into business, and what am I going to be doing as sole proprietor? And then when you look at all the attributes about you, you're the CEO, and you're the HR VP, and you're the head of advertising, and go on and on. The multifunction things that someone who's responsible, and you're also the person online with your bucks. And by the way, do you have a good credit rating? Okay. Are you well financed? And so those are a lot of the attributes I think that they can bring to the table. And that's critically important as you go, especially in today's environment.
Perfect. We have a question in the chat, which I'm going to mention. It says, what advice do you have for an entrepreneur if a business venture fails?
Okay. Either one of us, if that's to me, I'm more than glad to answer it. I think it depends. And here's the depending situation. It depends if someone, got downsized, the old word that was used when happened in 2008 and 2009. And we saw a lot of those folks come in, and they came in with their IRAs and the 401ks and everything else, and they were desperate. So they decided they wanted to go into a venture. That's kind of a potential for crisis, because if you go into something because that's the newest thing happening, and all of a sudden, that venture fails. But most cases, it's somebody that looks at it and says, I really want to do this. And many, many successful people have failed several times. The question comes into, what do you have to back you up? And many people, if they don't, they go back, get a couple of jobs to do what they need to do and come back again. The other factor is, look, there are more, at this point in time, there seems to be more 50 plus entrepreneurs starting jobs than there are millennials. And right now, when you start to look at that situation, it may very well start to change when we approach 2030. So I think a lot of that is contingent upon, what are you doing? What's your background? How much expertise do you have? Look, no one would have believed 5 years ago, one of our major clients, it's like almost 6 years, Expedia Travel, okay? Yeah, that's online, right? Well, no, it's a brick and mortar on Staten Island. They were the first one in New York City. And I couldn't believe it myself. We made them a client, they're a success story, and they did very, very well until March, when nobody's cruising, nobody's going anywhere. And so, but they're rebuilding now, and they're actually, building for next year on the come that hopefully this would happen. So circumstances are going to drive behavior, and that's the way I see it. But yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. That's a good thing. It's a good thing depending upon the circumstances. But I see more and more people, students, if we're talking students, it's fabulous. So we also have done classes to some of the business courses at CSI, and did it over at St. John's. We would do studies, and we would actually do mock interviews of the students in advance in a class, and actually, give them that kind of help.
I mean, I agree with Dean. I think also the person needs to look and see what they have learned from their failed business. Refer back to your business plan to be sure you did everything your business plan stated, because as any entrepreneurship professor knows, the business plan is the most important part of the success or failure of a business. How thoroughly did your business plan? Did you stick with it? Did you keep referring to it? Did you do it to get financing, just put it on the shelf and then look at it anymore? And see what you learn from mistakes. And if you can pinpoint things you may have made a mistake on or may have misread the market, then you should feel pretty confident that you can possibly do a business again. If you fail and you're not sure what it is, I would say spend more time and maybe gain more experience. Maybe there's something that you have lost in the translation that you misread or you didn't notice, or you didn't even entertain in your initial process. But I wouldn't say give up. But what I would say though is to try to constructively learn from your experience, learn why you made a mistake, and maybe you didn't make a mistake. Maybe it was just it wasn't time for the market, or maybe a person who had more money but able to tap into your market. If that's the case, maybe you need to think about waiting until you can have more financing. But I would say every experience, you need to learn something from your experiences. And I've always been a believer that we learn more from our failures than our successes, because failures is what you have to come and reevaluate yourself to figure out what you can do better in the future.
Perfect. And I'm gonna chime in real quick and to the audience. Both panelists mentioned failure. Failure is taught in entrepreneurship as being a requirement to actually create a successful business. So if you aren't making mistakes, if you aren't adjusting to those mistakes, if you aren't failing, you're actually not making a successful business, because you won't get it right the first time. But then they teach you about trying to what's called the pivot, or being lean. That means you don't go all in. You do your research, you test the market, you figure things out. If you put your hand in the pot and it's hot, pull your hand out quick enough before you burn yourself. So it's sort of a technique of being able to reassess what went wrong, and being able to make sure that all your resources aren't committed. So it's a lot of guesswork and testing. So a lot of it, as Derek said, is introductory. So when you're doing your initial research, a lot of your initial research and your initial searching helps to guide you in the process to understand if you made any mistakes. So if you come to market and it's not jiving, so to speak, you kind of look at your fundamentals. Did you really assess what's going on? Dean brought up an excellent point about competitive differentiation before. Why would you set up a pizza store in Staten Island where, it's the place where you get pizza, unless you're a pizza wizard, pizza master? It's not a place to start your pizza store. Unless you have grandma's favorite recipe and people are lining up outside your door, knocking your door saying, I want your pizza. And now you have to open up a pizza store because people are wanting it. So you have to be practical about your business. Some students, I'm using this example because I know alumni and students, they get into network marketing, like Herbalife or something like that. We all have our opinions on it, right? So I think a lot of the entrepreneurship thinking and thought process doesn't really apply fully, in that Herbalife is if you're the CEO of Herbalife, it does. But when you're buying into it, it's a different. You're buying into a product or service, you're selling, you're marketing it. It's focused on revenues based on a pyramid. Sometimes I'll have students say, I'm starting this as my business, and it's not working. And they're having challenges with that. And I'm going to open up to the panelists in that question in terms of why would you say someone who's engaged in something as network marketing, because it is a thing a lot of individuals get involved with as their first entrepreneurial endeavor, why would you say either oppose or support the endeavor? And what do you think are some mishaps from your business standpoint in regards to that? And I'm going to follow up with another question as well.
Yeah. Well, if you want, I could start out. Look, one of the things that I really want to emphasize, someone coming in new should come and see us. And I'll tell you why. We have an extensive research arm in Albany. We have 5 different librarians with master's degrees and what have you, and all they do for us is market research. So let's assume that person came in and started to talk about it, and I said, I sounds interesting, but why did you select that? So you start to do the inquiries and you start to find a little bit more about it. And then you say, well, okay, where? So you ask the who, what, when, where, and how questions. And then you go back and say, okay, we're going to do some research on this. And we're going to get some data for you that really will give you some help if you haven't really done this before you try to invest, good money. It's like, it's the old adage, good money after bad money. That doesn't make any sense. So why don't you basically, let's talk about that. So we'll try to scale the issue first, and then talk to them a little bit more about why have you considered that? look, we formed a number of different partnerships and relationships on Staten Island. I'm on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. We've recently partnered now with Valpak, which is a big organization in doing marketing activity. So one of the things is know about your selection. What's your game plan? What's that going to do for you? And if you don't have all the information, okay, you can come and see us. No one's going to laugh. Look, you know, the old cliche, which I kind of hate right now, but it says the worst question, the dumbest question you ask, the one you didn't ask. And that's really what's key. Find out about it, get more information. So I kind of think that's what the front end of this is. So that's how I would respond to that.
Good point.
Christian, could you just repeat your question again? I want to be sure I'm answering properly.
Actually, because we're short on time, I'm going to jump to a new question, and you can answer that.
Good.
I think this is an important question, so I want to make sure this gets in because we have about 14 minutes left.
Oh, wow.
For both, I know we talk a lot, right?
Yeah.
What is the biggest takeaway from working with different business owners for both of you?
Oh, well, I work with several small business owners and several larger business owners. The takeaway I have for this mostly small business owners is that they don't have business plans and they don't plan out their business properly. They start off and kind of wing it, and you can't wing a business. You can't wing a business. Even businesses that have great products and have a competitive advantage in what they're offering, you still have to have a business plan that you can, as your roadmap to show you everything you need to be doing every step of the way. And also with the business plans are not meant to be just done once. They're meant to be updated. They're meant to be changed and tweaked and what have you. And that's and usually what happens is that the business always have a misallocation of resources. And the reason I say misallocation of resources is because many times businesses do not want to spend money because they're so focused on making a living day to day and making their bills. But they don't understand that, I hate to say cliche, you have to spend money to make money, that sometimes you spend money in the right place, in the right sectors, then they will come back to you 2- and 3-fold in other ways. And it's difficult for me to convince, because I'm in the middle of two worlds. I'm in the middle of responding to my property owners who want their rent and trying to get the businesses a business assessment up that they're able to pay their rent. So I kind of go back and forth, and I have to kind of keep both of them at bay to some extent. But the thing I find out with the businesses is that you really must hold their hands, and you also must really encourage them to seek out help from people like Dean, help from people like me, because many times I actually held seminars with our local small business administration, and they wouldn't come out. I would try it in the morning, too early, try it late. They have to be home. So a lot of times, a lot of businesses are not really taking advantage of all the resources that are there for them to take advantage of. Now, I must switch now to something else. I have a lot of larger businesses that are very successful businesses and very sophisticated businesses. They take advantage of everything. Mm-hmm. Everything. They were the first one. I had businesses which had $30 million in revenue. They did PPP loans right away. My small business, I had to convince them the importance of it. They were hesitant. So, I'm a firm believer that you see what the big boys are doing and you emulate them on your level. It's kind of like that scene in the original Sabrina movie with Humphrey Bogart, where the chauffeur was chauffeur for the big rich family, and his daughter came back from Paris, and he had a whole bunch of money for her, and she asked, "You're a chauffeur, how did you do it?" He said, "Well, I listened to my boss every day. When he invested $10,000, I invested $20. When he invested $50,000, I invested $100. And his returns were equally as great, smaller level, but everything's relative." So I'm always trying to get my large business to even help me come speak to smaller businesses, because they have to be more sophisticated in what the opportunities are out there. And as Dean said, many times people are too embarrassed to ask. And like I said, my businesses, which are very successful, they take any advantage that they have, and they take all the resources they're able to sign up for constantly.
Thank you. Same question, Dean. Biggest takeaway from working with different business owners?
Yeah, I think the real takeaway is what we have done. I have businesses that have been with us, what we call long-term clients, been with us for over 15 years since I've been there. We put together the business plan for the St. George Theater, which is an icon on Staten Island, and they still work with us, and wonderful people. So there's that longevity. The second thing is I like to feel like we want to establish listening posts. So I have a business advisory board. We meet twice a year, and we talk about some of the things that are going on. So you have a listening post, and it includes local politicians. It includes, individuals who have bigger businesses, but when I say bigger, in a variety of industries. It could be a real estate person. It could be someone who's in a small business. As I mentioned, Expedia is one. So you can go on and on. It's about 20 some odd people, and bankers and what have you. And we meet periodically, and we talk about what's the needs of the business. What does the business person see? It gives us an idea what the issues are related to. So I kind of find that working. But more importantly, Staten Island is almost 500,000 people. And the area of Brooklyn that we cover, the rest of the CD, is close to 300,000. So almost 800,000 people, 20% of our students come from Brooklyn. So we're trying to meet, what are the needs of the business and get a good pulse on what we're doing and with our small businesses. And, that I think is very critical and important to see, are they really on the mark, and what are they really doing, and what do they really need, and how can we help that need? And it's going to shift. It's going to change. Look, quick stacks. We have over 2,000 active clients. 35% are startup inquiries. 45% female entrepreneurs. Of course, 55 male, and we have 34% minority clients. One of the biggest things we need to do today is work the diversity issue, which needs to get resolved. I know CUNY is working in a great environment trying to do that. I'm talking about procurement contracts. We have a program called Bidlinks, which allows people who have established businesses after a year or so to bid on government contracts and what have you. It's a specialized area. It takes time. You contact us and we'll do that. So there's lots of ways to keep, kicking the can further and further. No, actually keeping the can here and working all the issues.
Perfect. Just to sort of piggyback on that point, I think is really important that the audience understands that a lot of the recurring things both of you are mentioning about is doing your research and taking advantage of the services that are available. You have these long-term clients who are large, sophisticated businesses, and they're still using you guys over and over and over. So that's telling you something about if you're a startup business, maybe you should be doing the same thing. Now, we have a couple of more minutes left, so I'll ask this final question. Are there any encouraging signs for the future of entrepreneurship in this given environment, in this given climate?
I think there are definitely encouraging signs, entrepreneurship, because there has to be, because we're running out of options to some extent. Entrepreneurship has a way of increasing during tough times. When corporate America is hiring, when businesses are doing well, people get stagnated, and it's easier to work for somebody else, so you get a paycheck. You don't have to worry about how that paycheck is happening. So, but in this climate, I believe that the pandemic have revitalized almost the need for entrepreneurship, and it has also created new opportunities. Let's just take the whole remote learning and online learning. When I first started at SPS, Blackboard was far simpler than it is now, because over the years it's gotten far more friendly, friendly for students and far more developed. Now just think about the opportunities that are in remote learning for high school kids and elementary school children. This is something that may not be going away anytime soon, and also may become a real option for people going in the future. That is a big opportunity for several entrepreneurs to try to get this thing right. It creeped up on everybody, remote learning. Luckily at SPS, we were in a little bit of a groove. So during the whole pandemic, we didn't miss a beat with our online classes. But that wasn't the same with people who went from brick and mortar to online environment. So there's remote learning. That's just one area, as in many areas, that this current wave of situation has created opportunity for entrepreneurship, and also I think it's going to be more opportunities in more basic traditional type of businesses, things like soap and hand sanitizer and shampoos. People got a renewed interest in these kind of things because people are just home all the time. Home improvements, the new mental health industries, well-being industries. These are areas that are growing now, and these are areas typically encouraged by small businesses and encourages entrepreneurship.
Perfect. We have 4 minutes left.
Yeah, I think Christian, it really comes down to a lot of different things. It's almost not a question of do we, it's mandatory, because so many things are changing in parallel with what's going on. Large companies are hiring, let's say Amazon, using them as an example. Then there's some mixed reviews about that. So you're into robotics, and then people then are kind of moved into other areas. You really have to be very facile if you're thinking about what do I need to do to be part of the program. And so in a lot of cases, we have tried to adapt ourselves to service, the needs of the community. I put in motion a program called Feet on the Street. I realized that most of the businesses on Staten Island are small proprietors, about 9,000 businesses, and they're all pretty much, sole proprietor, less than 10 employees. And so in many cases, and I'm talking just prior to the COVID-19, we would have a program where we would go out and visit them. So I had one person that would work certain areas. I set it up by zones. Some would cover the North Shore, some would cover the South Shore. And we would have the ability to be able to know what's going on personally with that business. Personal attention, very important, staying current. And on the same token, the opportunity to say, look, we can help. Now we're still doing that, but we're not doing that as much. But if a person had a problem with trying to get a loan, they'd contact us and what have you, and we would do that. Sometimes they have a problem filling out the paperwork, and we'd go to them and we try to help them out. So there's a lot of ways that you can continue to do this, but the real issue is, now it's really important for people to adapt virtually, learn the new tools. There's Zoom, Teams, there's a variety of things that people need to know. Is a small business going to be able to do that? Possibly with training, but they need to do that to survive and understand today's world as opposed to the past.
Thank you. And just from an economic standpoint, typically when you are coming out of a recession or some type of economic doldrum, you see a lot more startup business activity. And it sort of mirrors everything the panelists are saying. When you're out of work, people start to hustle. So they're looking at their 401ks,
very true.
And you see a lot of startup activity that's actually a very important part of coming and moving out of a recession is startup business. And I've seen that a lot I even have a client, I do investment advisory services. Their gym collapsed and fell. It literally just broke apart. And now the neighborhood has no gym. And this is in Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn. And it's in the news. So there's literally no gym. It collapsed and fell apart. They're just like, okay, what do? We don't have a place to work. And, but they have, between the two of them, they have enough money to start their own gym. So now they're going to become the next gym on the block because of what's going on in COVID. So I want to close and thank all of our panelists and our audience for participating in this panel discussion. And I hope that you will join us for the next conference session, and have everyone to have a safe afternoon and safe evening and have a wonderful day.
Christian, thank you. It was a lot of fun, and enjoyed you and Derek, and hopefully we've imparted some information that's going to be beneficial to the people in the audience. Thank you so much.
hope this starts something big. I hope we keep doing this. I think it was very informative.
Yeah, I'd like to pal up with you again, Derek.
Anytime.